Hey, good morning, guys. It's Mr. Turner from Statesville Secondary School North. Go Tigers!
And this is Mrs. Turner from Port Credit Secondary School North. Go Warriors!
So, in keeping with our understanding of doing the talks from the dog, we decided that we would bring it to you a nice conversation. Mrs. Turner and I. Incidentally, Mrs. Turner is a very lucky woman to have a man like me.
Oh my gosh!
And so we're here to have some fun on the dock and talk about, well, George and Lenny. Awesome guys.
What you might have noticed, however, is the weather is slightly different here than it might be at home. We had a huge blizzard yesterday with 5 inches of snow, and Mr. Turner's showing off his snowshoes. So here we are, we're on our dock. It's spring. It feels like it's winter, but it's spring, so we'll see how we do. All right, shall we, Mr. Turner?
This is ridiculous. I am not doing this.
All right, well, maybe instead of freezing out here on our dock, we've got a warm fire inside, and we could have a literary fireside chat.
Well, that sounds way better.
I agree.
Let's do that.
Let's go. Much better. Why are you wearing the helmet?
It's fun to wear a helmet sometimes.
Take your helmet off. To Mr. Turner's grade 9s, I'm really sorry. His children have to live with him all the time.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Anyway, so I mentioned down on the dock that it was a literary fireside chat. Do you know where that comes from, Mr. Turner?
I do.
You want to tell us?
Sure. So during the 1930s, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was
Who's that?
president of the United States. Why you gotta be like that? He was president of the United States during the Great Depression. Because there was so much hand-wringing and upset and worrying,
Of course.
Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, would sit down in front of the fire and he would do his State of the Union or his addresses to the American people to kind of calm everybody down.
Via the internet?
No. It was, and it's kind of like how Donald Trump does it today.
Oh boy. All right, let's not go there. It was done by radio, is really what it was done. And it was the idea that the families could come together and listen to him, and as Mr. Turner said, would calm people down, would give people information. So that's what we're doing, but based on Of Mice and Men.
Sounds great.
Excellent.
Let's get at it.
Absolutely. So what we thought we'd do is we'd sort of go through a little bit of chapter 1. We know that you've read it, you've made notes, so a lot of this won't be new information, but it might add to the information that you have. And so we've got a couple of passages that we wanted to explore, and we'll see how we do. This is our second go through. We did one for our senior students, so bear with us. We're still relatively new at this. Let's go.
I just had one question for you.
Sure.
I know that we're having beans for dinner tonight. I'm just wondering if there's any ketchup.
There is ketchup, but poor Lenny didn't have any ketchup.
No ketchup.
No ketchup.
Wow.
I like beans with ketchup.
I like beans with ketchup.
Yeah. Although I don't like beans or ketchup.
Maybe we'll have nachos instead.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good.
Yeah, there we go.
All right, let's get started here. Unfortunately, we don't actually have a paper copy of the text up here. Can you imagine that?
I'm prepared.
So we're gonna try to.
Responsibility needs improvement.
Needs improvement for sure. I'll just blame it on Mr. Turner. All right. So what I thought we'd do is we just take a look at the first couple of sentences. So the first sentence: a few miles south of Soledad, the Salinas River drops in close to the hillside bank and runs deep and green. First sentence.
Beautiful.
What's that tell us?
Relaxing, beauty.
So think about, so here's a couple of things, right? One, you've got, anytime you have a river in literature, you've got some sort of journey, right? And so I think we have to keep that in mind. The other thing is that Mr. Turner and I actually took our kids to Salinas, not one of their favorite day trips, but we did drive through the Salinas Valley. And you have to understand that the Salinas Valley is the hub of agriculture in the United States, and in California especially. And the thing that I found the most fascinating while we were driving through is that you went through fields of different produce. So you'd be driving along and
millions and millions of strawberries.
Jack will never live that down.
We'll show you
that video afterward. Anyway, you'd drive through and you could smell the produce. So you'd go through the fields of strawberries, and the smell was almost palpable. You could touch it. Then you'd get through and you'd be in the cauliflower section.
I don't like cauliflower.
I know you don't like cauliflower. And the one thing that we noticed were avocados everywhere. You could find 7 avocados for $1.
I don't really like avocados.
Then you're not a millennial, because everybody likes avocado toast.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway, so you have to understand that this is where the migrant workers came, and hopefully you did a little bit of research, or at least learned a little bit about the Great Depression, and so you know that there were a lot of migrant workers because they were needed to work the fields of the produce, or the hay, or whatever had to be done. I'm sure somebody's going to correct me on the hay there, but anyway.
They grow hay a lot.
Anyway, all right, let's continue, shall we?
Sure.
Perfect.
Sounds good.
The water is warm too, for it has slipped twinkling over the yellow sands in the sunlight before reaching the narrow pool. On one side of the river, the golden foothill slopes curve up to the strong and rocky Gabilan Mountains, but on the valley side, the water is lined with trees, willows fresh and green with every spring, carrying in their lower leaf junctures the debris of the winter's flooding, and sycamores with mottled white recumbent limbs, and branches that arch over the pool. What's that tell you, Mr. Turner?
It's beautiful. Very naturalistic and idealistic for a place. Very positive. Feels very nature-friendly and welcoming.
Absolutely. When we hear spring in literature, what do we think of?
Rebirth, regrowth.
A new beginning.
New beginnings,
Right.
right? And so we kind of see, just shortly thereafter, we're going to see a new beginning for a couple of fellows who are maybe walking away from something not so great.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We'll continue on. We're not going to do this for the whole chapter,
No
we promise.
way, it's too long.
On the sandy bank under the trees, the leaves lie deep and so crisp that a lizard makes a great skittering if he runs among them. Rabbits come out of the brush to sit on the sand in the evening, and the damp flats are covered with the night tracks of coons and with the spread pads of dogs from the ranches.
Tell me about the rabbits, Jennifer.
May I finish?
Sorry.
And with the split wedge tracks of deer that come to drink in the dark. All right, let's talk about the rabbits. Why rabbits, Mr. Turner?
Rabbits are cute, and they're cuddly, and they're soft, and they're lovable, and
Innocent?
they are innocent as well. They're not predators. They eat carrots, I guess.
Yeah. Wasn't it Peter Rabbit that used to go after gardens and stuff? But
Bugs Bunny too, I think. He's a rabbit.
he is a rabbit. He's a famous rabbit. Our dog doesn't really pay attention to rabbits whenever she sees
Loves
them.
the fire too.
Yeah, she does. She does. All right, let's continue on. There is a path through the willows and among the sycamores, a path beaten hard by boys coming down from the ranches to swim in the deep pool, and beaten hard by tramps who come wearily down from the highway in the evening to jungle up near water. Okay, well, let's look at that. Why tramps? What does he mean?
I'm a little unsure, and I don't know if I can say that on...
No, not those tramps.
Oh.
No.
Okay.
Tramps was a word that was used for homeless men most of the time. Homeless men who
like bums.
Hobos,
Hobos.
maybe. Those are all terms used in the 30s to describe the men that had to wander from place to place to place in order to try to find work.
Guys down on their luck.
That's a nice way of putting it.
Thank you. Okay, we finally got there.
All right,
Nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so you have to understand that again, talking about those migrant workers, you had people that would move from farm to farm to farm in order to try to find work. And they were not treated well, not at all. In fact, they were treated the way that they're often still treated today, working very long hours for very little pay, and very transitory as well. All right, last one for now. Evening of a hot day started the little wind to moving among the leaves. The shade climbed up the hills toward the top. On the sandbanks, the rabbits sat as quietly as little gray sculptured stones.
Rabbits.
And then from the direction of the state highway came the sound of footsteps on crisp sycamore leaves. The rabbits hurried noiselessly for cover. A stilted heron labored up into the air and pounded downriver. For a moment, the place was lifeless. And then 2 men emerged from the path and came into the opening by the green pool.
Some people barbecue rabbits.
Really?
Sorry, they do.
I think Lenny would be very upset if he heard that.
He
Anyway.
just kills him anyway. Oh, sorry.
They had walked in single file down the path, and even in the open, one stayed behind the other. Why is that? What does that tell us?
Well, I think sometimes when there's a dominant person and a person who is less dominant or who is a follower, the person who is more dominant takes the lead. In this situation, it would seem that there's one man leading another, and so we get sort of already a hierarchy beginning.
Absolutely. So we see that automatically. Now, you'll notice that I have jumped through a couple of lines. As I said, we're not going to go through every line, but hopefully you can follow
Thank
along
goodness.
as we're going.
I've already read it.
Both were dressed in denim trousers and in denim coats with brass buttons. What does that mean? Why is that important? Why does Steinbeck tell us that they were both in denim?
Denim. Beautiful jeans.
Yes.
Well, denim is, I don't know, the working kind of guy, working class,
Yes.
the workers, worker bee.
Mr. Turner, anyway, denim was not seen the way that it is today. Denim was a signal of, as Mr. Turner said, of the workers, of the lower class. It wasn't seen as something luxurious. It wasn't seen as something fashionable.
Oh.
It was a... Yes, Mr. Turner?
I once had some money when I didn't have a family, and I had a pair of Levi jeans.
Where does that come from?
I don't know.
So there was a man named Levi Strauss, and Levi Strauss worked in a mine. And so he found that his pants were always getting ripped because they were of a thin cotton. And so he worked through different amalgamations of material and created what we know as denim.
Come on.
Yes,
Really?
hence Levi Strauss jeans.
I can't afford those, though.
You're better than the Gap.
Not much better.
All right, so we know that they're workers. All right, here we go. Both wore black, shapeless hats, and both carried tight blanket rolls slung over their shoulders. The first man was small and quick, dark of face, with restless eyes and sharp, strong features. Every part of him was defined. Small, strong hands, slender arms, a thin, bony nose. Behind him walked his opposite, a huge man, shapeless of face, with large, pale eyes, with wide, sloping shoulders. And he walked heavily, dragging his feet a little, the way a bear drags his paws. His arms did not swing at his sides, but hung loosely. All right, so, Mr. Turner, some thoughts?
Massive comparison between the two. One dark, quick, fast, is everything defined. The other one large, slow, kind of I don't know, lumbering.
Yes.
Like a
bear, right?
Right.
And notice that they use the word huge. Right? This man is extraordinarily big, and he has a presence, right? But he's definitely different than the first man.
Good contrast between them.
Oh, for sure.
Very different.
For sure. But who's the leader?
The small guy.
Wasn't there a character or a pair of characters called Pinky and the Brain from a long time ago?
That's right.
And one was really small and one was really big. And I think it was the small one who was the leader. And I'm sure if you look throughout history, you're going to see, or not through history, but through literature, you're going to see that partnership of the smaller man with the bigger sidekick. All right. Now, I'm going to skip forward a little bit. George looked sharply at him. What'd you take out of that pocket? Ain't a thing in my pocket.
It kind of be like Mr. Curran and me being the kind of
the small, quick man?
Small, quick man, and, well, yeah. Anyway, we'll go. Sorry. It's not fair, maybe.
For my grade 9s, Mr. Curran is a gentleman who works at Streetsville.
He's lovely.
He's a very nice man.
He is.
Yes.
Really good.
I'm trying to think of a comparison from our school. Let me think about it. May I continue?
Go, please.
Thank you. George looked sharply at him. What'd you take out of that pocket? Ain't a thing in my pocket, Lenny said cleverly. I know there ain't. You got it in your hand. What you got in your hand? Hiding it? I ain't got nothing, George. Honest. Lenny held his closed hand away from George's direction. It's only a mouse, George. A little bit of a break. Lenny's closed hand slowly obeyed. George took the mouse and threw it across the pool to the other side among the brush. "What do you want of a dead mouse anyways?" "I could pet it with my thumb while we walked along," said Lenny. Now, anybody who knows me knows that I have an absolute paranoia of mice.
Yeah.
In fact, especially living up in the north, we make sure there are no mice in our cottage. So the idea of petting a mouse is vile to me. But what does this tell us about Lenny?
Well, we know he's a large man. We already begin to understand that maybe he's hiding the mouse, which doesn't seem like very normal behavior. And it almost seems childlike.
I think that's the key.
He's petting something in his pocket.
Right?
And
were you telling me about a keychain you used to have?
yeah, like back when wheels were square.
He's much older than I am.
Young boys would carry rabbit's foot keychains, and it was soft. It was actual rabbit.
I'm pretty sure PETA wouldn't approve of that one.
Probably not.
No.
Well, I think it would be bad if the rabbit was attached to it.
I think what you need to focus on here, folks, is that childlike innocence of Lenny. He likes soft things. He likes to pet things. Just like a child likes their blanket, Lenny likes to have that softness with him. However, you have to remember, what was the word Steinbeck used for him? He's huge. Mice are small. There's going to be a problem. Exactly. Because he tells us that they start to bite him, and he squeezes them to stop them from biting him, ultimately killing them. All right, now we need to move on to why the men are where they are. Where have they come from? "Okay," said George, "and you ain't gonna do no bad things like you done in Weed, neither."
What? Weed sounds bad.
No, Weed is a town in California.
Oh, okay.
Not that
Be
Weed.
cool, stay in school, don't use drugs.
Feel sorry for me, please.
For sure.
A light of understanding broke on Lenny's face. "Oh, they run us out of Weed!" he exploded triumphantly. "Run us out, hell," George said disgustedly. "We run. They was looking for us, but they didn't catch us." They run us out of Weed. Who's they, and what does it mean to run us out of Weed?
Sounds like maybe they were participating in a marathon, and maybe they were hopeful to get maybe
Mr. Turner,
first or second place.
You're driving me a little crazy today.
Why?
Well, because we've been locked together for 6 weeks in a 1,200 square foot cabin, maybe. But, no, of course they were not running a marathon. Perhaps they had done something bad, and...
Maybe they were running away.
There we go. And who's they run us out of Weed?
Sounds like a big group of angry men, like a mob.
Why men?
Because women wouldn't do things like that.
Not at this time.
Not at this time.
Exactly.
Women were supposed to be in making dinner.
Right. Don't go any further with that
What?
one. Anyway, thank you.
I'm sorry.
All right. So yeah, we know that he's done something in Weed that caused them to leave, and they'll explain that further. Right? Is that idea of the soft dress and the woman having this soft dress, and Lenny wanting to touch it. You have to realize that Steinbeck does things in a circle, and so there's a cyclical nature to his writing. There has to be a reason that they're introducing the setting, the way that the way that he is introducing the setting, and the way that he's introducing the events that have happened. Please pay attention to that. Okay? We only have 6 chapters, so please pay attention. Sure we are. If you gather up some dead willow sticks, I got 3 cans of beans in my bindle. You get a fire ready, I'll give you a match when you get the sticks together, then we'll heat the beans and have supper. Lenny said, "I like beans with ketchup."
See? A lot of people like beans with ketchup. I also like bacon with ketchup and grilled cheese.
Grilled cheese.
Bacon.
Yeah.
And, well,
All right.
ketchup.
But again, except for Mr. Turner's culinary desires, there's that childlike innocence, right? They're out in the middle of nowhere. They're in the middle of
This is
a
soft.
field.
Like
It's
a
kind of a
mouse.
soft thing.
It's just soft like a mouse.
But what's George gonna buy? No.
Oh.
See, even Kiwi says no. For those of you who don't know, this is Kiwi.
Say hello, Kiwi.
Say hi, Kiwi. No.
Kiwi.
There we go. Anyway, all right? But we'll talk about a pup in a second. Could you stay focused?
Right.
All right. Remember that they're out in the middle of nowhere. They've just come. They've been run out of weed, and Lenny's focus is on ketchup. Okay, and so Lenny looked sadly at him. They were so little, he said apologetically. I'd pet them, and pretty soon they bit my fingers, and I pinched their heads a little, and then they was dead because they was so little. Just, we've already talked about it. I'm not going to focus on it, but keep that in mind. All right. And then George has a speech that, if you'll bear with me, is, I think, incredibly important in the relationship that the two men have. Bear with me. And I apologize, there are a couple of words, and we'll talk about that in a bit, but there are a couple of words that I normally wouldn't say out loud, but I'm reading from the text. Well, we ain't got any, George exploded. Whatever we ain't got, that's what you want. God almighty, if I was alone, I could live so easy. I could go get a job and work and no trouble, no mess at all. And when the end of the month come, I could take my $50 and go into town and get whatever I want. Why, I could stay in a cat house in a night. I could eat any place I want, hotel or a place, and order any damn thing I could think of. And I could do all that every damn month. Get a gallon of whiskey or sit in a pool room and play cards or shoot pool. Lenny knelt and looked over at the fire at the angry George, and Lenny's face was drawn with terror. And what I got, George went on furiously, I got you. You can't keep a job and you lose me every job I get. Just keep shoving me all over the country all the time. And that ain't the worst. You get in trouble. You do bad things and I gotta get you out. His voice rose nearly to a shout. You crazy son of a bitch. You keep me in hot water all the time. He took on the elaborate manner of little girls when they're mimicking one another. I just wanted to feel that girl's dress. Just wanted to pet it like it was a mouse. Well, how the hell did she know you just wanted to feel her dress? She jerks back and you hold on like it was a mouse. She yells and we gotta hide in an irrigation ditch all day with guys looking for us. And we gotta sneak out in the dark and get out of the country. All the time, something like that. All the time. I wished I could put you in a cage with about 1 million mice and let you have fun. I don't think he's laughing.
It's not funny.
But his anger left him suddenly. He looked across the fire at Lenny's anguished face, and then he looked ashamedly at the flames. All right, Mr. Turner, if you can stay focused and stay on task.
I was trying to, but then I noticed that your sweater looked very soft, and can I just?
No.
Oh.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, think about this. George desperately, he yells at Lenny. He says, I want to be on my own. I want to do things, all the things I could do on my own. Lenny causes him no end of grief. He can't keep a job. He's got to save Lenny. He's got to protect Lenny. And yet he keeps doing it.
Does George want to self-isolate?
Yes, he wants to self-isolate.
Is he avoiding the COVID-19?
They're not social distancing right now.
Oh.
Anyway, you have to understand that there's a reason that George stays. Lenny says, I could go off and live in a mountain. I could live in a cave. I could do my own thing. And yet George realizes that he can't do that. And I want you to think about that concept if we look at the theme of friendship and the necessity of that friendship that these two men have.
You're my best friend.
You're my best friend too, although you're driving me crazy right now. Notice, George continues on. He says, no, look, I was just fooling Lenny because I want you to stay with me. Trouble with mice is you always kill them. He paused. Tell you what I'll do, Lenny. First chance I get, I'll give you a pup. Maybe you wouldn't kill it. That'd be better than mice, and you could pet it harder. Lenny avoided the bait. He had sensed his advantage. If you don't want me, you only just gotta say so. I'll go off in those hills right there, right up in those hills and live by myself, and I won't get no mice stole from me. George said, I want you to stay with me, Lenny. Jesus Christ, somebody would shoot you for a coyote if you was by yourself. No, you stay with me. Your Aunt Clara wouldn't like you running off by yourself, even if she is dead. All right, so we've got Aunt Clara. Who's Aunt Clara?
Well, probably Lenny's aunt.
Probably.
Given the title Aunt Clara, I'm thinking that, and probably her name was Clara.
Thank you. What does that tell us about George and Lenny, though? Are they related?
Doesn't sound like it.
Doesn't sound like it, right? It's your Aunt Clara, not our Aunt Clara.
Right.
They are not brothers. They are not cousins. Something has pulled these two men together to stay as a partnership.
Maybe Aunt Clara.
Maybe, but Aunt Clara, we know, has died. Really?
Oh, that was it.
All right, we're almost finished.
Oh, goodness.
George's voice became deeper. He repeated his words rhythmically, as though he had said them many times before. Guys like us that work on ranches are the loneliest guys in the world. They got no family. They don't belong no place. They come to a ranch and work up a stake, and then they go into town and they blow their stake, and the first thing you know, they're pounding their tail on some other ranch. They ain't got nothing to look ahead to. Lenny was delighted. That's it. Now tell them how it is with us. Skipping a little bit, Lenny broke in. But not us. And why? Because I got you to look after me, and you got me to look after you. That's why. He laughed delightedly. Go on now, George. And live off the fat of the land, Lenny shouted, and have rabbits. Go on, George. Tell about what we're going to have in the garden, and about the rabbits in the cages, and about the rain and the water and the stove, and how thick the cream is on the milk, and like you can hardly cut it. Tell me about that, George. What do you recognize about this? Seriously, what do you recognize?
Well, I remember when my children were young, we would read the same story over and over and over.
And they always knew when you
over
and you
and over.
Okay.
And over.
And they
again.
always knew when you skipped a page because they had memorized it so completely. You'd try. You were so tired.
Over and over.
We get the idea. Good night, Moon.
Good night.
Oh boy. Good night, Moon.
Drove me nuts.
The going to bed book.
Ugh.
Sheep in a Jeep. Anyway, this is so important. We're having some fun at our children's expense, but this is to indicate the childlike nature of Lenny. He has heard this story over and over and over again and has memorized it, and yet wants George to tell him because he's always worried he's going to forget something. There's not a hope he's going to forget any aspect of this story. He knows it so well.
Forgets a lot of stuff though.
He does, but he doesn't forget the story. And so I think the other important thing is when George says guys who work on ranches are the loneliest guys in the world, but not us, right? These guys have a friendship. And we're going to meet several characters throughout the novel who are single guys who work on their own. They're solitary. They come together when they have to, and then they move on. And yet George and Lenny stick together. Okay? All right, last thing. Of course you did.
Thank goodness.
Well, look, Lenny, if you just happen to get in trouble like you always done before, I want you
in trouble. Why is he always
Can I finish, please? I
I'm
want
gonna
you
learn.
to come right here and hide in the brush. Now, Mr. Turner's class and my class, I know we've talked about foreshadowing. I don't think there could be a stronger sense of foreshadowing, right? We get a lot of sense. Remember I talked about that cyclical nature, and he's saying, if you get in trouble, come back here. All right.
I think that's probably important.
Probably.
Maybe.
Probably.
I don't know.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm hoping that sort of gave you a little bit of some insight, at least from my part, on chapter 1.
Why
Why you gotta be so rude?
you gotta be so rude?
Exactly.
Don't you
Now,
know I'm
in Mr.
going to?
Mr. Turner, I need you to be serious for a second. I really do.
Okay.
Because I already talked about the fact that there's a couple of words in chapter 1 that aren't normally things that we say, right? What you've happened to notice, or what hopefully you've noticed, is that the language and diction of George and Lenny is not as formal as we might see. And that indicates, again, their class. But we're also looking at a story that takes place in the 30s. And so starting in chapter 2, we're going to see a word that should never be used, in my opinion. And I will never recite it out loud, and I will never expect anybody to recite it out loud. And I know Mr. Turner would feel the same way. And the N-word is not acceptable. But in the 30s, it was a word that was used. It was not acceptable then, it's not acceptable now, but it was used. And Steinbeck did a very good job of trying to be realistic in his depiction of the people. And so we are going to meet a black man who is the only black man on the ranch, and we'll see the way that he gets treated by the others. But please understand that we are not condoning that language, and that we have a problem with it as well, but it is an accurate portrayal of that word.
Of the time.
Of the time,
That's right.
absolutely.
And it was
Sorry, not of the word, of the time.
Commonly used, and still in a derogatory way.
Oh, absolutely.
We have to know that, but very commonly used especially in various parts of the United States.
Absolutely. All right. And California was an interesting place because it wasn't southern U.S. and there were changing attitudes. And Crooks, this gentleman that we'll meet in.
You could do surfing in California.
You can. How on earth does that tie in?
Maybe George and Lenny will become surfers at the end.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to say goodbye now, and thank you very much for paying attention. Mr. Turner, do you want anything to add? Or do you want to add anything?
Do we actually have any ketchup?
Ladies and gentlemen, on that note, I will say goodbye. Have a great one. We'll talk to you soon.
Toodles.